Hey, Mark, let's go. Got a lot to do before you guys get a Christmas break. What? Tell you what, if Scrooge could change, so can I. No, I can't. You're an idiot. Okay, let's go. Close the door, close the books. Why? I'm a history teacher, and I'm going rogue. You know, the phrase Merry Christmas has been spoken for a long time, but it was popularized after Charles Dickens used it in A Christmas Carol. You know, there are many other traditions that may have been sent to the ash heap of history were it not for the Dickens classic. Let's take a look for the Christmas season at A Christmas Carol, the inspiration behind it, and the traditions that it popularized. Let's go rogue. On January 19, 1843, Charles Dickens published A Christmas Carol. The story centers around the redemption of Ebenezer Scrooge. Scrooge is visited first by his former business partner, Marley, who returns from hell, warning him about 3 spirits that will visit him on Christmas Eve. The ghost of Christmas past reminds Scrooge of his life as an adolescent and as a young adult. The ghost of Christmas present shows how other people are celebrating Christmas in the present while he goes off to his bedchamber. The ghost of Christmas yet to come shares Scrooge's future, his death, and how very few people cared much about his passing. By the end of the story, Scrooge has been transformed into an out-and-out philanthropist, giving away his millions to charity, giving his assistant, Bob Cratchit, Christmas off, and buying the biggest goose in town for Cratchit's family. Roll credits. Well, in order to understand the minutiae of Dickens' Christmas Carol, we need to put the story into context. Casey? That's a major point on the AP test, right? Context?
Absolutely.
Yeah, did you get that point?
I did.
Awesome.
I don't know.
Awesome. Well, this was Great Britain during the Industrial Revolution. Britain was one of the first nations to industrialize, was known as the workshop of the world. James Watt and Thomas Newcomen perfected the steam engine in the 1700s, and that steam now powered railroads and boats and factories all across England. The country's huge deposits of coal created the heat needed for steam, and the combination of iron and coal was producing steel to build the infrastructure of the country. But the production process is still labor intensive. The need for labor was filled by the mass movement of peasants into cities. London became the first city to reach 1 million people in the late 1700s. But not all these people found work. Life in the city was pretty terrible. If you did work, it was a 12-hour shift for barely a subsistence wage. Children worked in order to help the family make ends meet. Those that didn't lived on the streets. No schooling, most of them hungry. They wore tattered clothes. There were few resources to help struggling children. Charles Dickens wanted to do something to help those forgotten children. His first idea was to write a political pamphlet explaining the plight of children demanding help. But that was not who Dickens was. He then decided to write a short Christmas novella, A Christmas Carol. He made the right decision. The book's first run of 6,000 copies sold out by Christmas Eve. And by the end of 1844, 11 more editions had been published. The story was almost immediately adapted for the stage. The first film adaptation of A Christmas Carol was in 1901. Since then, scores of versions have been made into the screen in both the United States and in Great Britain, with Scrooge being played by actors as various as George C. Scott and Jim Carrey, Kelsey Grammer and Jack Palance, Bill Murray and Michael Caine, Walter Matthau and Captain Picard. I mean, the story has been presented by actors in local theaters, church congregations, as well as by Disney characters, the Jetsons, Looney Tunes, and Muppets. The redemption of Scrooge is central to the story. Many propose that A Christmas Carol is an allegory of the Christian concept of redemption. And what better time to be reminded of that than Christmas? To know that Christ came to make even the worst of sinners into good men, even capitalists that treated the working class and their children with such disdain. In stave 1, 3 philanthropists enter Scrooge's place of business and ask him for a donation for the destitute children of the city. His response is, "Are there no prisons? And what about the union workhouses?" He then sends the philanthropists away, empty-handed. When Scrooge is being led around London by the ghost of Christmas Present, he notices two other pairs of legs under his robe and asks him about them. The ghost opens his robe, exposing two emaciated children that hiss at Scrooge. When asked who they are, the ghost responds, "They are man's, and they cling to me," appealing for their fathers. The boy is ignorance, and this girl is want. Beware them both, and all of their degree. But most of all, beware this boy, for on his brow I see the word written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. When Scrooge asks if anything can be done for them, the ghost replies with the earlier words of Scrooge the philanthropist, "Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses?" The words echo in Scrooge's ears. The two children that emerge from being hidden away from society under the ghost robe, just as they were in 1843. Dickens has seen the impact of ignorance in London, and he writes his carol to move society to action. In the 1830s, Dickens frequented the Field Lane Ragged School, and the experience clearly made an impression. This was one of 5 schools in London formed exclusively for children that were raggedly clothed, who had only very ragged clothes to wear and rarely wore shoes. They didn't own clothing suitable for any other school, certainly not the Sunday schools run by the Anglican and the Catholic churches. Dickens was appalled by the conditions there and was inspired to become a reformer. Much of his work on ignorance and want was inspired by his work at the Ragged School. After writing A Christmas Carol, Dickens continued to support the Ragged Schools, donating funds on various occasions. It's hard to draw a direct connection, but A Christmas Carol may have been a driving force behind Britain's move toward compulsory education. In 1870, Parliament passed the Elementary Education Act, which funded elementary schools for working people, the formerly ragged, and set the framework for the schooling of all children in England between the ages of 5 and 12. In 1902, Parliament passed the Education Act, which standardized the educational systems of England. Education, lifting children out of poverty. Were these reforms directly connected to Dickens and A Christmas Carol? Maybe. Cool story, bro, but what about Christmas? I noted the phrase Merry Christmas was popularized in A Christmas Carol. The story has even further impact on Western culture. The Oxford English Dictionary added the word Scrooge as a designation for a miserly person. And Scrooge's retort of "bah humbug" is often used as a response to anything overly festive or sentimental. But in terms of Christmas, Dickens, more than anyone else, established our modern traditions. For many years, Christmas was rejected by many Christians. It was the pagan imagery that was infused into the celebration of Christ's birth. In the early 19th century England, Christmas was a rural affair, disconnected from the newly industrializing society of Great Britain. In A Christmas Carol, Dickens took the celebration of Christmas out of the countryside and introduced it into the increasingly growing cities. A period of romanticism in the early 1800s took people's attention away from the grittiness of the newly industrializing cities and focused it on a simpler past. The celebration of Christmas, with its religious rituals and observances, fell right in line with the Romantics' ideal of society. Dickens moved the beauty and the traditions of Christmas into the ugly, industrializing cities. His book inspired a humanitarian focus for Christmas, punctuated by generosity of spirit, family gatherings, seasonal food and drink, dancing, and games. Let's look at 7 ways that A Christmas Carol impacted our modern Christmas traditions. These are traditions that were saved by Dickens' Christmas Carol. 1, carols. It's right there in the title. What would Christmas be without the carols? Scrooge makes his disdain for Christmas known with a bah humbug to a group of carolers singing outside of his door. Caroling was running out of fashion during the Industrial Revolution. Working in a tin mine in the British Midlands didn't lend itself to whistling while you worked. Life was hard. But since the book was almost immediately adapted into a wildly popular stage play with music, caroling became synonymous with Christmas once again. 2, Christmas trees. Prince Albert, the German husband of Queen Victoria, brought the traditional Christmas tree to England in 1840. The English weren't really excited about it, not like Americans. It seemed pagan to the Victorian English. But in 1850, Dickens wrote a short story called A Christmas Tree, showing the tree as the centerpiece of a classic Christmas celebration. And if Dickens declared indoor trees a part of traditional Christmas, then indoor trees were going to be part of traditional Christmas. 3, gift giving. Casey, did you give me that gift for Christmas? Sure. I take that as a no. Gift giving was actually a New Year's Day tradition. But in an effort to inspire acts of charity in A Christmas Carol, Dickens highlights the giving of gifts, especially giving toys to children as part of the Christmas celebration. Of course, Scrooge gets into the game with the gift of a ginormous goose for the Cratchits at the end of the story. 4, paid vacation. Of course, the main relationship in the story is between Scrooge and Bob Cratchit. In the first act of the story, Cratchit asks Scrooge for Christmas off to be with his family. Scrooge refuses. This was not unusual in the 19th century. Christmas was not a federal holiday. It'd be like asking for Flag Day off. But after the visit from the 4 ghosts and his change of heart, Scrooge relents, giving Cratchit the day off with pay. The impact of A Christmas Carol was so profound that bosses soon began giving their own workers time off for Christmas, and eventually became a national holiday in the United States in 1870. 5, grub. Much of the story is based around food. When the ghost of Jacob Marley shows up, Scrooge doesn't believe it. There's probably less grave in you than there is gravy. On the other hand, the Cratchits have little to eat. In the 1840s, a large feast was considered outrageously selfish. Dickens changed that with A Christmas Carol. It isn't about the amount of weight you gain, it's about the amount of time you spend with family and friends. Weight gain being collateral damage. Not only did Scrooge give Cratchit the day off to spend with his family with pay, but then he sent the biggest goose in the butcher shop to the Cratchits as a gift. Whether it's ham or turkey or pheasant or goose, Christmas dinner. 6, a jolly fat guy with a huge beard. The ghost of Christmas present is a kind of a hybrid of Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, Father Christmas. He is the closest thing that the book has to a Santa Claus figure, celebrating the season by shaming capitalists and lamenting the inadequacies of child welfare. Santa Claus was lost to Christmas until the American poem The Night Before Christmas, written in 1823. Still not a figure associated with Christmas until the 20th century, when Coca-Cola started an ad campaign featuring the jolly fat guy with a huge beard. 7, the Christmas spirit. Since 1843, December's been overwhelmingly the season of generosity. Much of that is because of Dickens' restoration of Christmas Past and the unforgettable story of Scrooge and his repentance. The idea that Christmas brings out the best in all of us. Without Dickens' Christmas Carol, Christmas would not likely be the holiday that it is today. Shopping malls, trees, lights, grubbing. God bless him. God bless us all. Everyone. Hey, thanks for coming by. I hope you had fun. If you did, please like and subscribe. Look out for a couple of other Christmas-themed periods coming up. I want to thank my producer, Casey Moulton, Avery, and Alex. Thank Mr. Brent Allen for letting us borrow his studio here on the campus of Columbia High School. I had fun. Go and quit my day job. Remember me. When a long-lost friend visits you in the middle of the night, warning that you're going to be visited by 3 spirits, I'm Mark Haggard. I'm a history teacher, and I've gone rogue.